Okay, okay, thank you so much. So I'll try to address the interlinkages between the ecosystem services, livelihood, and migration in the climate-stressed Indian Sundarban Delta. Just for a case study, why I have chosen this area of research, because I have found that so many climate reports and assessment reports, there are very rare occasions they have incorporated or considered this kind of interlinkages due to the climate drivers. So this is basically the GBM delta, India and Bangladesh combined. You can see this is the Indian part and this is the Bangladesh part. Quite different from the Indian part. The Bangladesh, they have some kind of impact zone and critical area zone like this. People are not living within the forest of Bangladesh. But unlike Bangladesh, in Indian Sundarban, from the British period, this much of forest was cleared, and only this amount of forest is still existing. So this is the GBM delta as a whole, and this is the international boundary you can see. And what about the Indian Sundarban? That is a part of the GBM delta and the largest estuarine mangrove ecosystem in the world, formed by the huge sediment discharge by the three rivers, Ganges, Brahmaputra, and also in the part of Bangladesh that is Meghna. It was declared as a World Heritage Site by UNESCO, Biosphere Reserve by Government of India, and also recently as a Ramsar site by the Ramsar Convention. And this is the only mangrove tiger land in the world, both part of India and Bangladesh. This is the location. I am not going very much detail into this, but this is basically distributed in two districts in India. The West Bengal is the state, that is the North 24 Parganas and South 24 Parganas. There are 19 community development blocks, 6 in North and 13 in the South. And there are some data regarding these things. But the most interesting thing is that the 85% of population depend on agriculture, 40% lives on less than $1 per day income, and 70% children malnourished, and 40% women illiterate. And the entire thing is uh, basically rural setup. So this is the designated area of Indian part of Sundarban, and this Dampier Hodges line actually the northern extremity of the Indian Sundarban. Most of the cases you can see there are community development blocks who are inhabited by people, and this is the only forest, that is the buffer forest, light green color, and deep green color is the core area of the forest. So this is the biodiversity of Sundarban, and you can see this can be very much rich in biodiversity. You can see there are tigers and different kinds of birds and rich mangrove forest along with other wildlife. The population growth is like this. So we can assume how much population is coming up in the last 150 years around like that. And the increasing stress on the natural resources, the land, agriculture, and homestead infrastructure, the water, especially the drinking and irrigation water, the forest land, particularly fishing and crab collection, the extreme pressure is ongoing pressure is on the forest. And this is the process of land reclamation since 1770, since the British period. So you can see the gradual process of land reclamation within this. The culture and the heritage of the people are all along, and this is very famous uh, literature there. And there are temples, there are festivals, and they worship some goddess of forest like this. There are drama, there are some kind of other activities, cultural performances, all these things are there. So whenever we are talking about the climate issue, uh, the temperature is increasing, and the average temperature is increasing, uh, the surface temperature especially. And this is the rainfall. The total rainfall is increasing, and that is 2.08 millimeter per year. The rate is there, but the number of rainy days decreased, implies a higher intensity of rainfall. The rate of uh, increase of total rainfall is relatively more and more uh, prominent in the post-monsoon session. This is the onset of June monsoon rainfall. Actually, there is lesser amount of June rainfall, which actually going to affect the agriculture practices, the timing of sowing and harvesting, and that is actually also impacting the productivity. And especially in the post-monsoon session, whenever there is any kind of harvesting situation, the unpredicted rainfall and erratic rainfall actually going to affect the practices. The relative mean sea level rise, there is only one station, and that is being analyzed and producing different kinds of data. So that is very much confusing which one we should take. So that is coming up from my PhD thesis, that was around 2.26. And now after that, there are 2014, and recently there is some kind of thesis that is 3 millimeter per year. So the name of the stations are different. These are all within the river system, and this is only the coastal area. So that is 2.9 millimeter, quite close with this 2.26 in 2002, whatever I have found. But every data is basically above the global mean sea level rise. So there is prominent sea level rise. These are the river systems of the uh, Indian Sundarban. So you can see there are a lot of rivers, at least 8 prominent rivers are there. And these are basically having some flow from the upland, and these are not having any flow, no more any flow from the upland. These are actually acting like a tidal creek. So in these climate conditions, that is, there are some aggregated impact of the cyclones. And since 2005, 2021, these are the name of the cyclones with varying level of impact. Basically, the major impact happened during this 2009 Isla, and also the Philin, especially in the Odisha part, and recent cyclones Amphan and Ias just in the month of May. It created havoc. So a lot of damage we have witnessed. The major livelihood are basically agriculture, as I have said at the beginning, and riverine fishing, honey collection, crab collection, and prawn seed collection. The agriculture, the cropping intensity in the Sundarban, if we see in the state level, the cropping intensity is 77%. But whenever we are talking about Sundarban in one particular district in north, that is 41%, and in south, that is 31%, much lower than the state level cropping intensity. And you can see the change in two types of cropping through time. And you can see the Oro is coming up havoc because the post-monsoon rainfall is going up. And in this particular island, we have surveyed there is some kind of difference in the Boro, but the almond production is down. So agriculture is down. And in this particular area in the Sundarban, the census actually, the population census, this is actually implying there is change in the cultivator, number of cultivator and agriculture laborers. And this reluctancy is possibly due to the people who are educated but not employed, not intended to cultivate their land, or lack of irrigation water, and also the uncertain rainfall. And the market chain is very poor here. So there are mediators within the market chain, and they are getting the most of the benefits. And high cost of labor and fertilizer, pesticide cost is another reason. Absence of salt tolerant high yielding seed that is not readily available always, and there is no crop insurance. So this kind of reluctance is there, and that's why in another literature they have uh, told that this people dependency on non-timber forest product is higher than agriculture. So this is true from our experience also. If we see other kinds of livelihood, That is the fishing. So you can see the graph that is going down, and the crab that is also going down, and honey is also going down slightly. But as a whole, the ecosystem services is going down, maybe due to climate change, maybe due to intensified catching or some population growth. We are not sure about how much responsible, but climate change is much responsible because the soil salinity, river salinity, and the flowering season is going to change. So there is some implication from this climate change, definitely. So if we consider these kind of climate change drivers, then which is actually influencing the ecosystem services like agriculture, fishing, honey collection, crab collection. There might be some positive or negative things. We don't know really, but we can conclude those surely. And they are putting pressure on the livelihood, the income, housing, household asset, and other amenities. And what's the way out? Adapting with the changing situation. So they try to adapt or coping with the changing situation from the climate stress. And they tried to come up with some kind of cultivation of salt tolerant paddy. Different names are there. They tried to come up from embankment construction and maintenance from to protect their agricultural land from the saltwater inundation. Rainwater harvesting is another mission. Organic and mixed farming is another kind of initiative. And sometimes land conservation, conversion, agriculture to aquaculture is happening. So for ready profit. So the riverine fishing, just for example, they have tried to come up with improved fishing tool or change their location of fishing, followed the weather forecast properly and improved supporting tools. They have improvised something, and they came up with year-long fishing rather than 3 months or 4 months of fishing. So they tried a lot. Regarding the crab collection, they have also tried something kind of adaptation or coping initiatives. The honey collection also, they have used some other kinds of methods. And more honey collectors in a group is another important thing because people are going to join in a huge group. Otherwise, the honey collection earlier time was 5 to 7 people, now 9 to 11 people. They are entering into the forest. So they also tried with some emergent livelihood, like converting their land from agriculture to aquaculture, and they were getting some kind of ready profit, but sometimes the maintenance and management is poor, and the aquaculture, the streams are being infected by virus. So there is total loss. There is some kind of crab fattening. They catch the crabs from the forest, very small crabs. They put in a pond and they feed it. And whenever they are export quality, the size and the flesh, they try to export it. Beekeeping in the box is another kind of initiative they have taken, and tourism as a whole has come up for more and more profit. But in all the cases, the people sitting in the city, they are investing and they are taking the major profit. So the livelihood of the local people is not much changing. So if we go back to the same system, there is climatic drivers, influence, pressure on the livelihood, and the livelihood based adaptation includes all these things, whether it is improved, degraded, or unchanged livelihood. That is not very much effective, this kind of coping on adaptation. Very rare situation, they are getting some benefits. So they are going to reject the things for the improved or kind of adaptation or coping kind of things. So they have to take some decision what they will do for their secured livelihood, whether they will migrate or they will not migrate. If we see from our earlier project, the DECMA project, we have made 1,500 surveys in the Sundarban itself, and some kind of peri-urban areas we have done 750 surveys, household surveys. And if you see, only 3% of the population surveyed, they are indicating some kind of environmental events because they don't know what is going on in the climate, but they can feel it. So everything they are talking about basically based on their income or financial capability. So they have highlighted seeking employment is 60, almost 62%. Why they are migrating? We have asked them. So this is the situation, and they are migrating to other states and around Kolkata. So 51% is within West Bengal, the state, and around the Kolkata city, and other states are also prominent. So we tried to come up with some kind of objective that whether the traditional livelihood people in agriculture, in fishing, in crab collection, or in honey collection, whether they are migrating outside or they are very happy with their earning. And we found that within the agriculturists, that is the 858 people surveyed, 47% migrated outside the delta. And in the fishing community, 15%, crab community, 12%, and honey collecting community, 20% migrated. So the traditional livelihood or traditional ecosystem-based livelihood is basically being converted to the labor-based livelihood situation due to the erratic rainfall, due to the other uh, uh, climatic drivers, and the change in the salinity and other kinds of influence due to the climatic drivers. What are the key findings from the migration? That both the male and female are migrating. And the year of first migration was in 1961. That was very rare migration. But nowadays, the migration is very, very common, and you can find a lot of ghost villages. There is no male person, only female and older people are there. So we used to say those ghost villages, and they are being absorbed in the construction sector because they don't have any such kind of skill, other kind of skill like carpentry, electrician, or something like that. And whenever the male persons are taking the decision, they are taking their own. But whenever the female persons are going outside, the decision is being made by their husband. And if you see the contrast in the monthly income, that is very prominent. So there is some kind of gender discrimination within the process. So the seasonal migration male is much more dominating than the female. And the preferred destination, whenever the male and female both are migrating, they used to go to other states. But whenever the female migrating alone, they are used to go in the nearby location like Kolkata city or the peri-urban areas of Kolkata city. Even this is one kind of map we have prepared like that, the risk map, and very low to very high. Even for their livelihood, most of the time they migrate from the low risk zone or very low risk zone to very high zone because they don't have any understanding about the risk, what we have analyzed. So we try to put some this kind of map and try to convince them that you should not go in those areas. Those are very, very high risk zone. But they were not convinced because they got some opportunity for their income. So they are taking risk. And whenever they are going outside the delta, they are basically going from the high ecosystem services area to low ecosystem area. So that is kind of financial compulsion and economic compulsion is there. And another survey we have carried out. So there is prominent trend of migration, future migration rather. So the migrants, they want to remigrate. So 54% of the migrants, they want to remigrate. Who are not migrants, non-migrants, they want to migrate. 25% of the non-migrants, they want to migrate. They are going to migrate within few years. And this kind of migration is very, very prominent. Their desired destinations are very prominent from the pull factor from their neighbors, their friends, their other relatives. So there is strong pull factor. And if you see that is where there are labor force voyage in some states of India, they are preferring those areas because those the areas in Tamil Nadu, Kerala, and Karnataka, the labor force is basically sitting in the Middle East for other kind of job. So there is labor void, and they are preferring all those areas. Thank you so much. for your patience.